I became the villainous stepmother everyone hated. Then I tamed 2 brats with my cooking, and the cold-blooded Prince Regent bowed his head. When I opened my eyes, a teacup was flying straight at my face. It carried wind. The wind carried murderous intent. And the murderous intent carried the unmistakable scent of cheap jasmine tea. I tilted my head. The cup grazed my ear, smashed against the wall, and shattered with remarkable artistic flair. "You vicious woman," a boy shouted. "You tried to hurt my sister again." He looked about 10 years old. His face was pale, but his eyes were fierce, like an underfed wolf cub with an unreasonable amount of pride. Behind him hid a little girl with delicate features and rosy cheeks. She clutched one arm and cried. To be precise, she wailed. There was plenty of thunder, but not a single drop of rain. I looked at the children. Then I looked down at the luxurious silk dress covering my body. A flood of unfamiliar memories poured into my head. Wonderful. I, Shen Zheyaozhou, founder of a successful chain of private dining restaurants, had spent the previous night hate-treating a melodramatic novel called The Prince Regent's Beloved White Moonlight. Apparently, I had become so angry at the plot that I had died. Now I had transmigrated into the novel as Shen Zheyaozhou, the villainous stepmother everyone despised. In the original story, Shen Zheyaozhou married into the Prince Regent's household and was framed by the male lead's cousin, Liu Ruyan. She was accused of abusing her 2 stepchildren. She was divorced in Chapter 3. She froze to death in Chapter 5. Before dying, she did not even get one hot meal. When I had read that part, I had left a furious comment beneath the story. An author may be cruel to a villainess, but denying her a final meal is an insult to the entire food service industry. Retribution had arrived. I was now the woman who died hungry. As 10,000 mythical beasts stampeded through my mind, a frail, gentle voice drifted in from outside. "Sire, don't be afraid. Your aunt is here." Liu Ruyan hurried into the room in a moon-white gown, followed by a crowd of maids and elderly servants. The instant she saw the red marks on the little girl's arm, her eyes filled with tears. "Princess consort, even if Chuan disobeyed you, you should not have beaten her with a cane." I glanced down at my hands. There was no cane. I was holding a piece of osmanthus cake with one bite missing. The original Shen Zheyaozhou had apparently continued, eating even while standing at death's door. I respected that spirit. Liu Ruyan pulled Pei Chuan into her arms and wept beautifully. "Chuan is only 6 years old. How could you be so heartless?" The servants stared at me, as if I were a mountain demon wearing human skin. I rose and brushed cake crumbs from my skirt. "You are saying I caused those marks on her arm?" Liu Ruyan faltered. She had probably expected panic, not questions. "There are witnesses and physical evidence. Why continue denying it?" "Is that so?" I picked up a cup of warm water, dipped a handkerchief into it, and walked toward Pei Chuan. The girl immediately shrank backward. Her eyes were full of suspicion. "Don't be afraid. I don't beat children," I said softly. "I only beat eggs." She clearly did not understand the joke. However, perhaps she decided it did not sound like something a child trafficker would say, because she stopped retreating. I took her small arm and gently wiped the red and blue injury. Half of it vanished. I wiped again. The rest disappeared. The room became so quiet, I could have heard a mosquito break wind. I held up the stained handkerchief. "Miss Liu, your family's canes are remarkably sophisticated. They leave rouge behind when they strike someone." Liu Ruyan's face turned white. Pacey froze as well. I brought the cloth closer and smelled it. "Peach Blossom Workshop Rouge, 3 taels of silver per box. The color is vivid, but it dissolves in water. Excellent for painting fake wounds. Less useful when confronted with the truth." Liu Ruyan immediately turned toward one of her maids. "Xiao, what is the meaning of this?" Xiao dropped to her knees. "It was me. This servant acted alone. I knew the little princess disliked the princess consort, so I wanted to help her punish you. I laughed inwardly. Sacrifice one maid, save the mistress. A timeless technique. Liu Ruyan passed blame so quickly that it was a pity she did not work in a kitchen. She would have been excellent at tossing a wok. Since she acted alone, send her to the capital prefecture office, I said. Liu Ruyan stiffened. It was merely foolish play among children. Surely there is no need to involve the authorities. She forged injuries on a royal child, slandered the Prince Regent's consort, and attempted to turn the legitimate heir of this household against its mistress. I counted the charges on my fingers. 3 offenses. If we deliver them together, perhaps she will receive a prison cell with a window. Xiaotou panicked and twisted around to look at Liu Ruyan. Miss, save me. You were the one who told me to. Silence, Liu Ruyan snapped. Too late. Everyone in the room had heard. In my mind, drums began pounding and ceremonial horns started blaring. Her first move had frightened her own accomplice into confessing. This White Lotus was not merely unskilled. She had never installed a brain. At that moment, a low and icy voice came from the doorway. Let her finish. Everyone dropped to their knees. I turned and saw a man in black brocade step into the room. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and narrow-waisted. His features were so cold they resembled an inkstone left outside for 3 days in the dead of winter. Pei Yanhan, the Prince Regent, and the male lead of the original novel. He looked at me first, then at Xiaotou. Who instructed you? Xiaotou trembled like a sieve. Liu Ruyan hurried forward. Cousin, she must have been threatened into speaking nonsense. Pei Yanhan did not look at her. I was asking her. It was a simple sentence. Yet Liu Ruyan reacted, as though she had been slapped from across the room. In the end, Xiaotou did not dare expose her true mistress. She only insisted that she had acted alone. Pei Yanhan ordered his guards to take her away for questioning. Then he turned to me. I will investigate today's events. I raised an eyebrow. Your Highness should investigate quickly. I have little patience, and grudges left overnight tend to sour. His gaze lingered on me. He was probably wondering whether the teacup had struck my head after all. I ignored him and turned to the 2 children. I heard you intend to starve yourselves. Pacey lifted his chin. As long as you remain in this residence, we will not eat. I nodded. How principled. 1 hour later, I had a pot of red braised pork placed in the center of their courtyard. Since the children had decided to fast, I, as their stepmother, ought to respect their choice. As for eating red braised pork directly in front of them, that was culinary freedom. The instant the lid was lifted, the fragrance grew legs. It raced around the courtyard, then climbed directly into everyone's nose. Pieces of pork belly, layered with fat and lean meat, gleamed beneath a rich red sauce. Each piece trembled slightly as if beckoning. Come, eat me. Do not pity me merely because I am meat. Pei Chuantuan's eyes locked onto the pot. Pei Si swallowed, then immediately turned his face away. A cheap trick. I picked up a piece, blew on it, and placed it in my mouth. Rich without being greasy. Tender enough to melt on my tongue. It tasted so good that I nearly forgave the world. I released a deliberate sigh. Pei Chuantuan could not resist asking, Why are you sighing? I feel sorry for you. Her eyes brightened. Then you'll let us eat. No. I picked up another piece. I feel sorry for the pork. It was carefully simmered for 2 hours, yet no one is willing to appreciate it. I suppose I must suffer and eat 3 extra bowls on your behalf. Her mouth turned down. Pacey immediately covered his sister's mouth. Don't fall for it. I nodded solemnly. Exactly, you must not fall for it. This pork contains soy sauce, sugar, spices, and an evil spell capable of making people forget their vows of starvation. Both children took a step backward. I nearly laughed aloud. Ancient children were wonderfully innocent. They believed anything. Modern diners would have photographed the meal first, then asked whether I had used a filter. I slowly finished one bowl of rice. Then I had sweet and sour ribs, steamed egg custard with shrimp, and candied lotus root with osmanthus brought out. Pei Chuantuan's stomach finally growled. The sound was crisp and clear. She lowered her head, looking as though she wished she could roll herself into a ball. Pacey straightened his back. That was my stomach. What an excellent elder brother. He was willing to take the blame for everything on his sister's behalf, including the activities of her digestive system. I set down my chopsticks. You may eat. Pacey regarded me warily. What are your conditions? Wash your own hands, serve your own rice, take only what you can finish and waste nothing. He stared at me. That's all. After eating, carry your bowls back to the kitchen. Pei Chuantuan asked in a tiny voice, We don't have to kneel and beg you. I frowned. It is a meal, not an ancestral ceremony. Why would you kneel before me? I am not dead yet. A cough sounded beyond the courtyard wall. I turned. Pei Yanhen stood beneath the moon gate. The guard behind him had his head lowered, but his shoulders were trembling. He was clearly suppressing laughter. Pei Yanhen entered the courtyard and looked at the dishes. You prepared all of this. Who else? I asked. Did you think the ingredients married inside the pot and produced these dishes by themselves? He was silent for a moment. Then he sat opposite me. I immediately shielded the red braised pork. Your Highness, tasting fees apply. The entire residence belongs to me. The pot belongs to me. It was purchased from the residence treasury. It bears the surname Shen now. He stared at me. I stared back. We conducted a silent battle over property rights. At last, he took a silver ingot from his sleeve and placed it on the table. Is this sufficient? I pushed the pork toward him at once. Your Highness may eat freely. Anything you cannot finish can be packed for later. What was dignity? Could it buy groceries? Pei Yanhen tasted the pork. His hand paused. I remained outwardly calm. Inside, my imaginary tail rose toward the sky. Please. I had conquered 3 Michelin reviewers, 1 notoriously picky movie star, and the cat downstairs that ate nothing but imported food. Defeating him was merely a reduction in difficulty. The children eventually surrendered to the fragrance. Pacey served his sister first, then sat down himself. I did not stop him, nor did I seize the opportunity to lecture them. When a child's stomach was empty, every grand principle in the world was no more useful than steam rising from a pot lid. It looked impressive, but it never reached the stomach. Halfway through the meal, Nanny Joe entered with several servants. The moment she saw the children eating ravenously, she slapped her thigh and began to wail. The young heir and the little princess are starving. They must never receive enough food. With one cry, she transformed the cheerful courtyard into a funeral hall. I lowered my chopsticks. Nanny Joe, are you responsible for the children's kitchen? Yes, Your Highness. What is their daily meal allowance? Her eyes flickered. 5 dishes and 1 soup every day, as well as bird's nest, pastries, and fresh fruit. I looked at Pacey. What do you normally eat? Plain congee and steamed buns, he answered coldly. Sometimes a small plate of pickled vegetables. Nanny Joe hurriedly said, The young heir has a weak stomach. Miss Liu ordered that his meals remain light. Liu Ruyan happened to enter the courtyard at that exact moment. How impressive. Mistress and servant arrived on cue. Anyone unaware of their arrangement might have assumed someone backstage was striking a gong to signal their entrances. Liu Ruyan spoke gently. Serre was ill before. A physician truly did recommend a light diet. I smiled. Light food does not mean poverty rations. I ordered someone to bring the kitchen ledgers. The records clearly stated that the 2 children consumed 2 chickens, 3 fish, 1 serving of bird's nest, and 2 jars of goat's milk every day. In reality, they ate congee and steamed buns. I pointed at the ledger. Where are the chickens? Sweat covered Nanny Joe's forehead. The chickens may have flown away. The fish, they swam away. The bird's nest, perhaps the swallows regretted giving it to us. I began to applaud. Excellent. According to you, this is not a royal kitchen. It is an animal escape convention. Pei Yanhan's expression was cold enough to freeze an entire river. Investigate. His guards immediately seized Nanny Joe. In her panic, she pointed at me and screamed, "The princess consort does not care about the children. She only wants authority over the household." I rose and walked toward her. "You are half correct." She stared. "I do intend to manage the household." I lightly tapped her cheek with the ledger. "After all, if you continue managing it, every chicken and fish in the residence may flee west with their entire families." The servants could no longer contain themselves. Several lowered their heads to hide their laughter. That night, Nanny Joe was interrogated. Pei Chuantuan, her stomach round from dinner, slowly shuffled closer to me. "Will there be red braised pork tomorrow?" I patted her head. "That depends on your behavior." She thought for a moment. "Pretty auntie." Pacey immediately glared at her. She corrected herself at once. "Pretty evil woman." I was delighted. Her form of address had not improved much, but her aesthetic judgment was flawless. Just then, Pacey pulled a folded piece of paper from beneath his soup bowl. A crooked sentence had been written across it. "Be careful, your stepmother intends to poison you." I stared at the note. Slowly, I smiled. Excellent. Someone had decided life was too comfortable and had volunteered to provide me with entertainment. Pacey slapped the paper onto the table. The warmth that had begun to enter his eyes froze again. "How do you explain this?" I examined the note. The paper was ordinary. The ink was still damp. A trace of osmanthus syrup clung to one corner. I understood immediately. Only the kitchen maids, the servants who delivered the meal, and the people Liu Ruyan had brought with her could have touched the soup pot. And Liu Ruyan had sent over a plate of osmanthus cakes that very afternoon. This was not a clue. It was the culprit writing her name across her forehead, then worrying I might be nearsighted. "There is no need to explain," I said, folding the note. "We simply arrest the culprit." Pacey frowned. "You know who did it." "No." "Then how will you catch them?" I smiled mysteriously. "With sauce." He looked at me as though I were gravely ill, but unusually creative. The next morning, I placed 3 small bowls outside the courtyard gate. One contained honey. One contained flour. The last held a purple cabbage mixture I had prepared. Everyone who had entered the kitchen was ordered to leave a handprint on a sheet of paper. When Liu Ruyan arrived with her maids, confusion covered her face. "What are you doing, Princess Consort?" "Looking for a ghost." Pei Chuantuan immediately hid behind my leg. I patted her shoulder. "Do not worry, it is only a poor ghost." One of Liu Ruyan's maids, Chunlin, visibly paled. Once everyone had left a print, I took out the threatening note and brushed it with diluted vinegar. The faint marks on the paper turned purplish red. The pattern matched Chunlin's handprint. She dropped to her knees. "This servant merely found the note. I do not know why my prints were left on it." I nodded. "That is reasonable." Relief crossed her face. Then I produced a small plate. "In that case, explain why the osmanthus syrup on the note is identical to the rare Western osmanthus honey found only in Miss Liu's courtyard." Chunlin's face became bloodless. Liu Ruyan immediately said, Someone may have stolen honey from my courtyard. That is possible. I smiled at her. Which is why I ordered your courtyard sealed last night. At the bottom of the honey jar, my servants found sheets of paper cut to the same size as this note. The handwriting also matches Chunlin's. Liu Ruyan's fingers trembled. I thoughtfully delivered the final blow. Furthermore, Chunlin visited a pawnshop last night and pawned a gold hairpin. Your name was engraved upon it. Every gaze in the courtyard shifted toward Liu Ruyan. Her eyes reddened at once. Do you suspect me? Not suspect, I corrected. State. She choked out. I have cared for Ser and Chuantuan for years. How could I possibly harm them? Pei pressed his lips together. Liu Ruyan immediately turned to him. Ser, surely you believe your aunt. He did not answer. He was young, but he was not stupid. He had simply been trapped inside a lie. Everyone had told him his stepmother was evil, and Liu Ruyan was the only person who truly cared for him. Yet in 3 days, he had witnessed painted injuries, stolen food allowances, and a false warning about poison. A child's trust was like a bowl. Breaking it was easy. Repairing it was difficult. Liu Ruyan, however, had smashed her own bowl more efficiently than I diced vegetables. Pei Yanhan sat in the central seat. Take Chunlin away. Confine Miss Liu to her courtyard. Until the matter is fully investigated, she is not permitted to leave. Liu Ruyan stared at him in disbelief. Cousin, if you are innocent, you have nothing to fear. His tone held no favoritism. He did not soften merely because she cried. I nodded inwardly. The male lead might have a permanently unpleasant expression, but at least he had not misplaced his brain. After Liu Ruyan was escorted away, the courtyard fell quiet. Pei stood there for a long time before asking, Why are you helping us? I crouched until we were at eye level. First, you are children of the Prince Regent's household. I am its princess consort. Caring for you is both proper and expected. Second, I despise people who use children as chess pieces. Third, I paused deliberately. Pei Chuantuan asked nervously, What is the third reason? You will look more festive after gaining some weight. Pei Chuantuan touched her cheeks. If I become fat, will you eat me? That depends. She threw herself around my leg. Mother, don't eat Chuantuan. That single word, mother, stunned everyone present. I looked down at the little dumpling clinging to my leg. It had only been 3 days. This progress was alarmingly fast. But I liked it. Pei Si's ears turned red. He looked away and muttered, Hopeless. 1 meal was enough to buy you. I looked at him. Are you not eating? He remained silent for a moment, then held out his bowl. What are we having tonight? I nearly laughed. His mouth was made of iron. His stomach was remarkably honest. That evening, I prepared a tomato and braised beef hot pot. Both children ate until sweat appeared on their foreheads. Pei Yanhan sat nearby, silent as a statue that had come to steal dinner. After the meal, he sent the children back to their rooms and remained behind. Previously, I misjudged you. I raised an eyebrow. Is your Highness preparing to apologize? He was silent for a heartbeat. A man of his position had probably apologized to very few people in his life. Yet he rose and gave me a formal bow. I was wrong. I stared at him. Not because I was moved. I simply had not expected those words to emerge from his mouth. They seemed rarer than an order to confiscate an entire clan's property. What were you wrong about? I believed you entered this household with hidden intentions. I also believed you would never sincerely care for the children. And now, you do have hidden intentions. My eyes narrowed. He glanced at the banknotes I had collected from the table. You desire silver, food, and the cooking pots in my residence. I struck the table. Your Highness is brilliant. The corner of his mouth moved. He might have been smiling. Or perhaps, after years of maintaining the same expression, one of his facial muscles had simply malfunctioned. Beginning today, you will control the household accounts and domestic affairs. Use whatever people and resources you require. I accepted immediately. Only a fool rejected power when it was personally delivered to her door. The next morning, I opened the Prince Regent's main ledger. After reading for half an hour, I discovered something terrifying. The residents had allegedly purchased 8,000 caddies of birds' nest in a single year. I stared at the figures. Unless everyone in this household had grown a swallow's beak, there was no possible way they had consumed that amount. I closed the ledger. It appeared that Liu Ruyan was not the only problem. The residence was also infested with a colony of enormous rats who treated its storerooms as their private granary. My first act after taking control of the household was to seal the storerooms. My second was to investigate the main kitchen. My third was to eat breakfast. No major matter should ever be handled on an empty stomach. Hunger encouraged irrational decisions. For example, demanding 10% less compensation than one deserved. Chef Feng stood at the kitchen entrance with his arms crossed and his nose lifted nearly to the rafters. "Your Highness, the kitchen is filled with smoke and grease. It is no place for someone of your noble status." "Are you afraid the smoke will trouble me?" I asked. "Or that I will notice the 400 caddies of sea cucumber recorded in your accounts?" The flesh on his face trembled. That was ordinary consumption. Last month, the Prince Regent was away on campaign. The 2 children ate congee. Miss Liu ate vegetarian meals. Apparently, the only person consuming sea cucumber was you. I looked him up and down. Your figure does support the ledger. Several kitchen assistants burst out laughing. Chef Feng's face turned red. You may inspect my accounts, but you may not insult my culinary skill. I was not insulting your culinary skill. I spoke to him with deep concern. I was insulting your belt. It is struggling heroically. He exploded with rage and challenged me to a cooking contest. He chose the ingredients. We were allowed to use only leftover rice, eggs, and scallions. I almost laughed enough to accumulate spiritual merit. Challenging me with egg-fried rice was like attacking the god of thunder with a wooden stick. Chef Feng cooked first. He heated oil in a wok and moved with obvious experience. His spatula flashed as he tossed the rice. The grains separated cleanly, and the aroma was respectable. The servants applauded. When my turn came, I separated the yolks from the whites. I mixed the yolks through the cold rice until every grain was coated in gold. I quickly cooked the whites, added the rice, and stir-fried everything over a fierce flame. The spatula struck the iron wok in a rapid, crisp rhythm. Pei Chuantuan leaned through the doorway and clapped excitedly. Mother is beating the wok. She is frying rice, Pei Si corrected. Does the wok hurt? A wok has no mouth. It cannot speak. Without pausing my tossing motion, I called out, "It can. It just told me Chuantuan may eat only 1 bowl at noon." Pei Chuantuan immediately covered her mouth. Bad wok, no talking. I scattered in the scallions. Golden rice rolled through the pan. Every grain carried a delicate fragrance of egg without becoming greasy or sticky. I filled a bowl and placed it before Chef Feng. Taste it. He took 1 bite with obvious resentment. Then he stopped moving. He took a second bite. Then a third. Finally, he lifted the bowl and shoveled the rice into his mouth. I folded my arms. Chef Feng, your evaluation. He lowered the empty bowl. His expression was heavier than if a close relative had died. How can identical ingredients produce such a different flavor? Because you fried rice. I lifted my chin. I fried dignity. Chef Feng remained silent for a long moment. Then he suddenly knelt. Master, please accept this disciple's bow. I stepped backward. Do not bow yet. We have not settled the matter of 400 caddies of sea cucumber. He straightened his kneeling posture. This disciple is willing to confess everything. I was deeply gratified. There was no problem in the world that could not be solved by a bowl of egg-fried rice. If one bowl failed, add a plate of sweet and sour ribs. The investigation revealed that Chef Feng had accepted kickbacks from suppliers, but the majority of the stolen money had gone to Nanny Joe and the purchasing steward responsible for the outer courtyards. He returned every coin and voluntarily produced hidden ledgers. I did not dismiss him. Instead, I kept him as my assistant. Culinary skill could be taught. If a person's character was not beyond saving, it could be hammered into shape. If he failed to wake after the hammering, I could always send him to help Nanny Joe carry her fraudulent accounts. That afternoon, I was testing a recipe for flaky flour pastries when Pei Yanhan entered the kitchen. It was the 8th time he had passed through that day. The first time, he claimed he was inspecting the guards. The second, he claimed he was checking the storeroom. The third, he said he smelled something burning. During the next 5 visits, he stopped inventing excuses. I placed a tray of freshly baked pastries by the window. Your Highness, the kitchen has not caught fire. I know. There are no assassins. And no court memorials are hiding beneath the wok. He said nothing. I looked at him with a smile. Then what are you doing here? His expression did not change. Inspecting. Does inspecting require you to stare at the pastries? Their shape is suspicious. I handed him one. Eat it. Help the residents eliminate suspicious objects. He accepted the pastry and took a bite. Although he did not normally enjoy sweets, he slowly finished it. I suddenly realized that his habit of stealing food while wearing a cold expression was almost adorable. He resembled a large black cat that refused to admit it was hungry. Before I could tease him further, one of Liu Ruyan's maids delivered an invitation. 3 days later, famous chefs from across the capital would gather at Moonwatch Tower for a culinary salon. Liu Ruyan had entered my name without asking. She had also spread word throughout the city that the Prince Regent's consort considered herself the greatest cook beneath heaven. It was an obvious attempt to praise me into disaster. First, she would raise me high. Then she would let the capital's famous chefs knock me down in public. I looked at the invitation and smiled. Miss Liu is remarkably thoughtful. Pei Yanhan said, if you do not wish to attend, do not go. Why would I refuse? I slipped the invitation into my sleeve. Someone has built me a stage for free. It would be unkind to waste all the effort she invested in destroying herself. On the day of the culinary salon, the entire street outside Moonwatch Tower was packed. For 3 days, Liu Ruyan had told anyone willing to listen that the Prince Regent's consort had declared her cooking unmatched and intended to challenge every famous chef in the capital. Her talent for publicity was extraordinary. If she were not so determined to ruin me, I would have hired her to distribute handbills outside my future restaurant. 6 famous chefs entered the competition. The most renowned was Gao Yidao, known as One Cut Gao, head chef of Drunken Immortal Restaurant. When he saw me, his expression filled with disdain. Your Highness possesses a body worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Why lower yourself by entering a kitchen to compete with people like us? I nodded. You are right. He faltered. I continued. Therefore, if you lose, you need not feel too humiliated. Losing to someone worth 1,000 pieces of gold is more respectable than losing to an ordinary cook. His face darkened. The first round tested knife skills. Gao sliced a radish into strands as fine as hair, earning thunderous applause. When my turn came, I did not perform with a radish. I placed a block of tofu into a bowl of water and cut it beneath the surface into thousands of delicate strands. When the tofu entered the broth, it opened like a white chrysanthemum. Everyone inhaled sharply. Pei Chuantuan sat in a private room upstairs. "Why is everyone breathing in like that?" she whispered. Pei Si answered seriously. "They must be hungry. Perhaps they are trying to inhale the fragrance into their stomachs." The second round tested soup. Gao prepared Buddha jumps over the wall, a lavish stew filled with rare and expensive ingredients. Its aroma was rich and powerful. I presented a pot of clear chicken broth. It looked almost like water. Yet the instant it touched the tongue, its deep savory flavor sent a pleasant numbness through the mouth. Gao finished one bowl. Silently, he served himself another. The third round allowed us to prepare anything we wished. Everyone expected me to create something even more luxurious. Instead, I brought out a bronze pot. I poured in a fragrant red broth filled with chilies and spices. Around it, I arranged thinly sliced beef and lamb, vegetables, tofu, and mushrooms. "This is called hot pot." Someone asked, "What does that mean?" "It means everyone sits around one pot and cooks the ingredients themselves. Raw food becomes cooked, and people who are unfamiliar with one another become familiar by eating together." They did not entirely understand my explanation. That did not prevent the fragrance from dragging them toward the table. A thin slice of lamb required only a few swirls through the bubbling broth. Dipped into garlic and sesame oil, it was tender, spicy, and intensely aromatic. Moonwatch Tower rapidly transformed from an elegant gathering of famous chefs into a large-scale battle for meat. Scholars who had entered with dignified expressions nearly ended lifelong friendships over the final slice of beef. Gao set down his chopsticks and saluted me with both hands. "Your Highness's culinary skill has convinced me completely." In the corner, Liu Ruyan's expression resembled that of someone who had swallowed 3 caddies of raw ginger. She had intended to humiliate me publicly. Instead, she had financed my first public business promotion. I stepped onto the platform. Since everyone enjoyed the meal, Shen Family Restaurant will officially open in 3 days. The crowd paused. Then cheers filled the tower. Liu Ruyan shot to her feet. "As the Prince Regent's consort, how can you show your face in public and engage in trade?" I looked at her. Which law of Great Zhou forbids a princess consort from conducting business? She had no answer. I smiled. "A woman who knows how to earn money has nothing to be ashamed of. A person with no ability who insists on controlling others is far more embarrassing." Soft laughter rose from every direction. Another layer of color drained from her face. On the day Shen Family Restaurant opened, 3 long lines formed outside. The menu included dual broth hot pot, lotus leaf chicken, milk-flavored steamed buns, and special meals for children. Pei Si managed the accounts. Pei Chuantuan handled tasting. Each time she tried a dish, she drew flowers on a sheet of paper. 1 flower meant delicious. 2 meant extremely delicious. 3 meant she would willingly eat the plate as well. Pei Yanhan changed into plain black clothing and attempted to blend into the crowd. Unfortunately, the jade ornament on his head was worth 1 house. The pendant at his waist was worth 2. Even the soles of his shoes were embroidered with dark gold cloud patterns. Chef Feng recognized him immediately. "Your Highness, are you waiting in line?" Pei Yanhan gave him a cold look. "You are mistaken." Chef Feng glanced at the Prince Regent's command, token hanging from his waist. Then that token. I found it. I leaned against the doorway and laughed so hard I nearly fell over. With a perfectly expressionless face, Pei Yanhan walked toward me and handed me a wooden box. Inside was a stack of property deeds. 3 storefronts in the Eastern District and 2 estates in the West. Use them to expand the restaurant. I blinked. "Is your Highness investing?" "No." "Then what is this?" He looked at me, his voice low. "A congratulatory gift." Something lightly struck my heart. This man did not know how to speak sweetly. When he gave gifts, however, he gave land. It was practical, and precisely to my taste. I had someone bring him a bowl of longevity noodles. Today is also your birthday, is it not? His expression shifted. The original novel had mentioned that Pei Yanhan never celebrated his birthday. His mother had died on that very day. For me, he asked. Who else? Chuan cannot finish noodles this long. When he lowered his head to eat, the coldness around his eyes finally softened. That night, an imperial decree arrived. The Empress Dowager had heard of my restaurant's fame and personally ordered me to take charge of her birthday banquet 7 days later. Along with the decree came boxes of spices prepared by the imperial kitchens. I opened one and smelled it. My smile vanished. Aconite powder had been mixed into the spices. A small amount in food would cause abdominal pain and unconsciousness. Combined with wine, it could kill. I closed the box. Someone intended to poison the Empress Dowager at her own birthday banquet and blame me. Not only was I unafraid, I felt almost excited. The wok was hot. It was time to stir-fry a few people. I did not announce the discovery. That evening, I told Pei Yanhan privately. He did not order me to withdraw from the banquet. He did not secretly arrange everything without consulting me. He asked only one question. What do you want to do? I was pleased. A good companion did not seize the spatula from your hand. He asked how thoroughly you wanted the enemy cooked. We follow their plan. I pushed the spice box toward him. Trace its origin, but do not alert them. Pei Yanhan nodded. How many people do you require? 2 teams of shadow guards, 1 imperial physician, and 3 live chickens. He was silent. What are the chickens for? 1 tests the poison. 1 serves as a witness. 1 remains available for stew tonight. His expression became extraordinarily complicated. I suspected he was thinking how fortunate it was that he was not a chicken. On the day of the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet, the palace overflowed with guests. The main dish under my supervision was an 8-treasure medicinal soup. Liu Ruyan's confinement had recently ended. She entered the palace with the old madam. She wore a modest, elegant gown and stood quietly in a corner, looking like a woman who had suffered endless injustice while remaining kind and forgiving. Anyone unaware of her actions might have mistaken her for a pure white lotus blooming in the mortal world. Unfortunately, I knew better. Cut open this lotus root, and every hollow inside was black. Just as the soup was about to be served, Liu Ruyan hurried into the center of the hall. Your Majesty, this subject has something to report. She knelt and pointed at my soup. The medicinal dish prepared by the princess consort contains a forbidden substance. It must not be consumed. The hall erupted. The Empress Dowager frowned. How did you learn this? Liu Ruyan bit her lip. This subject happened to see the princess consort pour black powder into the soup. The powder smelled faintly bitter and became slightly pungent when heated. It may have been aconite. I nearly applauded. Her description was so detailed that one might have mistaken her for the owner of a poison shop. I stepped into the hall. Miss Liu is very familiar with aconite. I once read about it in a medical text. Which one? She stiffened. The collection of 100 herbs. That book records aconite as pungent and warming. It says nothing about its smell after being added to soup. I smiled at her. On which page did you read that description? Does your family's edition contain 2 extra chapters unavailable to the Imperial Medical Academy? Suppressed laughter rippled through the hall. Sweat appeared on Liu Ruyan's forehead. Perhaps I remembered incorrectly. Then how did you know the powder was black? I saw it myself. Finely ground aconite is light brown. It appears black only after being mixed with the star anise powder I was given today. I moved closer. You even know the color of the mixture. It appears you did more than read about it. You prepared it yourself. Her face turned white. She hurriedly pointed at the soup. This subject only wishes to protect the Empress Dowager. Whether the soup is poisonous can be determined by an imperial physician. Very well. I clapped my hands. The physician who had been waiting outside entered immediately. He examined the soup. A short while later, he bowed. Your Majesty, the soup contains no aconite. It contains only the intended medicinal ingredients. Liu Ruyan jerked her head up. Impossible. The moment the word left her mouth, the entire hall fell silent. Inside my head, gongs and drums erupted. The confession was complete. The coffin had been nailed shut. All that remained was selecting a pleasant burial site. I widened my eyes. Why is it impossible? Her mouth opened. No answer emerged. I ordered servants to carry in a sealed spice chest. Last night, I discovered poison among the spices delivered by the imperial kitchens, so I replaced them. The original spices have remained sealed inside this chest. Pei Yanhan's guards dragged in a eunuch from the imperial kitchens. The man confessed that a steward from Prince Duan's household had bribed him to exchange the spices. The person who had delivered the instructions was Liu Ruyan's former nurse. Liu Ruyan collapsed to the floor. It was not me. I have been framed. I produced an apothecary receipt. 5 days ago, your maid purchased 2 taels of aconite in the Liu family's name. It was purchased as medicine. For whom? My nurse. Where is she? She returned to her home village. I nodded. What a coincidence. His Highness invited her back. She is waiting outside. The nurse was brought into the hall. The moment she saw Liu Ruyan, she confessed everything. Liu Ruyan had secretly allied herself with Prince Duan. Her role was to create chaos inside the Prince Regent's household. In return, Prince Duan had promised that after their plan succeeded, she would become Pei Yanhan's princess consort. I shook my head. Miss Liu, is your brain rented? She stared at me. If Prince Duan truly intended to kill the Prince Regent, why would he keep you, a witness who knew everything, alive long enough to become a princess? Liu Ruyan looked stunned. Judging by her expression, this was the first time she had considered the question. I sighed. Some people possessed ambition, like a tiger, and intelligence, like a newly hatched quail. Prince Duan immediately rose to distance himself. The testimony of one servant is not sufficient to convict a prince. Pei Yanhan sat calmly among the guests. That is true. Relief crossed Prince Duan's face. Pei Yanhan continued, which is why I have already ordered an investigation of every estate, trading house, and granary under your name. Prince Duan's expression changed again. The Empress Dowager ordered Liu Ruyan temporarily imprisoned. The banquet continued. After my 8 treasure soup was served, the Empress Dowager drank 2 bowls and rewarded me with an imperial gold token. Halfway through the feast, Prince Duan presented a sack of what he claimed was newly harvested rice gathered for disaster relief in the south. I sat close to the sack. When the wind shifted, a faint moldy odor entered my nose. I set down my chopsticks. Your Highness. Pei Yanhan turned. What is it? I looked at the rice and slowly smiled. Someone not only intended to poison the Empress Dowager, he also intends to feed disaster victims rice inherited from his ancestors. The grains Prince Duan had presented looked white and glossy. At first glance, they appeared fresh. I rolled several grains between my fingers. A faint layer of white powder immediately clung to my skin. Fresh rice possessed a natural sheen. This rice was white in the same way Liu Ruyan's face was white. Excessively. Falsely. And the color came off when touched. I rose. Your Majesty, this subject requests the use of a cooking pot. Every official in the hall looked at me strangely. Other people impeached a prince with witnesses, testimonies, and court memorials. I required a pot. The Empress Dowager had apparently grown accustomed to my methods. She immediately ordered servants to bring a small stove and bronze pot. I washed the rice before everyone. The water turned cloudy white during the first rinse. Prince Duan sneered. Rice water is naturally cloudy. Does the princess consort not even understand that? I do. I spoke slowly. That is why I deliberately said nothing and waited for you to speak first. It makes the humiliation more convenient. His smile stiffened. I cooked the rice into congee. There was no clean, sweet fragrance. Instead, a stale smell rose from the pot. I added 1 drop of iodine tincture to the rice water. It immediately turned dark blue. Gasps filled the hall. The imperial physician stepped forward to examine it. The rice is coated in large quantities of starch and lime powder. They were likely used to conceal mold stains. I crushed one of the cooked grains. The center was yellow. Some grains were already moldy. This is not newly harvested rice. It has been stored for at least 5 years. Someone polished and washed moldy old rice, then coated it with powder to sell it as fresh grain. Prince Duan struck the table and rose. Nonsense. Perhaps it became damp during transportation. I looked at him. Your Highness, this rice is old enough to have grandchildren, and you claim it merely became damp. Someone in the hall failed to suppress a laugh. Prince Duan's face turned iron gray. You are nothing more than a cook. What gives you the authority to determine the age of grain? I nodded. An excellent question. I ordered 3 sacks of rice brought inside. The sack on the left contains rice harvested this year. The middle sack contains 3-year-old rice. The sack on the right contains Prince Duan's disaster relief grain. I cooked congee from each. The flavor, water absorption, and thickness of the rice oil differ completely. The fresh rice absorbed water evenly and released a rich fragrance. The 3-year-old rice was dry and hard. Prince Duan's rice cracked during cooking and tasted bitter. Dark spots floated from several grains. Officials from the Ministry of Revenue examined the samples. They quickly confirmed that the shipment contained severely deteriorated grain. Pei Yanhan ordered his men to present newly discovered account books. A grain company under Prince Duan's control had purchased 300,000 she of old, moldy rice at a low price the previous year. This year, it sold the grain to the imperial government at the price of fresh rice, intending it for southern disaster relief. The difference amounted to several 100,000 taels of silver. Prince Duan's face became ashen. The ledgers could have been forged. Then examine the banknotes, Pei Yanhan said. Chests of banknotes and gold ingots were carried into the hall. Every item matched an entry in the grain company's accounts. Prince Duan continued struggling. This had nothing to do with me. My steward acted without authorization. I could not resist asking, does the imperial family possess a secret ancestral technique? He glared at me. What? Whenever something goes wrong, a servant acted without authorization. I counted on my fingers. Miss Liu's maid acted alone. Nanny Zhou's purchasing steward acted alone. Now Prince Duan's steward has acted alone. I turned toward the emperor. Your Majesty, perhaps these servants should attend court instead. Each one appears to wield absolute power, while their masters know nothing. The young emperor lowered his head and coughed. His expression appeared solemn. His shaking shoulders suggested otherwise. The imperial guards seized Prince Duan. As he passed me, he hissed, Shen Jiazhou, do you believe you have one? I smiled kindly. Have I not? Liu Ruyan knows all your secrets. She will not spare you. I considered this. My secrets. Yes. I stole half a bowl of Chuan Tuan's double-skin milk pudding yesterday. Does she know about that too? Prince Duan nearly stopped breathing. In an excellent mood, I returned to my seat. Pei Yanhan served me a bowl of soup. You handled today's events well. Only well. Extremely well. No reward. He removed a stack of banknotes from his sleeve. My smile immediately became as warm as spring. Your Highness is wise, mighty, and blessed with unmatched judgment. You are the greatest ruler in all Great Joe. A moment ago, you called me stone-faced. That was an affectionate name. The corner of his mouth lifted. When we returned to the residence, Pei Si and Pei Chuantuan were already waiting at the gate. Chuantuan threw herself into my arms. Did Mother win? I won. Did the bad people cry? Almost. Pei Si stood with his hands behind his back, attempting to look mature. Liu Ruyan was brought back to the residence under guard, but she escaped from her courtyard. I frowned. How? She took one of the kitchen chickens hostage and threatened the guards. I fell silent. I had heard of people taking human hostages. I had heard of people stealing carriages. I had never heard of someone taking dinner hostage. I rolled up my sleeves. Come. Pei Yanhan asked, where are you going? To rescue the chicken. Liu Ruyan stood in the rear courtyard with disordered hair and a barred hen clutched in her arms. The chicken appeared calmer than she did. It even turned its head and calmly pecked at one of its feathers. The guards surrounding her did not dare approach. They were not truly afraid she would harm the chicken. They were afraid the scene was so absurd that if word escaped, the Prince Regent's dignity would never recover. When Liu Ruyan saw me, she tightened her fingers around the chicken's neck. Shen Jiazhou, order them to retreat. I raised one hand, signaling the guards to step back. Let us speak calmly. Do not harm the innocent. Liu Ruyan laughed bitterly. So you are afraid after all. I'm afraid for you. I looked at the barred hen. It has a terrible temper. Last month, it injured 3 kitchen assistants. If you squeeze any harder, it may choose mutual destruction. As soon as I finished speaking, the chicken beat its wings violently. Its claws raked across Liu Ruyan's face. She screamed and released it. Pei Si reacted quickly and caught the flying chicken. Pei Chuantuan wrapped it in her small cloak. The siblings worked together perfectly and successfully rescued the hostage. I felt deeply proud. The children were growing. They were already capable of participating in arrests inside the royal residence. The guards moved to seize Liu Ruyan. She turned and rushed toward the chicken coop. Stay back. The account book is hidden inside. I will burn it now. She pulled out a fire striker. I remained where I was. I did not even attempt to stop her. Believing I had been frightened senseless, she triumphantly lit the dry straw and dragged a wooden chest from a hidden compartment in the coop. Shen Jiazhou, you believed the account book could condemn me. Once it burns, you will have no evidence. I nodded. That is reasonable. She stared. You will not stop me. Please continue. I stepped to the side. If the fire is insufficient, I can lend you dry wood. At last, Liu Ruyan sensed something was wrong. She opened the chest. There was no account book inside. It contained a thick stack of letters. The uppermost envelope was addressed to Prince Duan. Her expression changed violently. I smiled. The real account book was delivered to the palace yesterday. What you found are the secret letters exchanged between you and Prince Duan. How? Because I ordered that hidden compartment constructed. Her legs weakened. In the original novel, Liu Ruyan had indeed hidden evidence in the chicken coop. After learning this, I searched her courtyard in advance, found the letters, and deliberately placed them here. I knew she would come to retrieve them. She believed she was destroying evidence. In reality, she had identified its location for me. It was self-service surrender. Convenient. Efficient. No waiting required. The guards extinguished the fire and seized her. Liu Ruyan glared at me. You knew from the beginning. I knew part of it. I walked closer. You were so eager to provide the rest. She began struggling. I have not lost. If you had not suddenly changed, Pei Si and Pei Chuantuan would have hated you forever. Cousin would never have trusted you. You are right. She froze. The former Shen Jiaozhao had a violent temper. She did not know how to deal with children, and she made mistakes. But her faults did not give you the right to starve those children, forge injuries, or manipulate them. You were never defending them. You needed them to hate me so that you could present yourself as the only good person in their lives. Her face became gray. She had nothing left to say. Pei Si approached with the barred hen in his arms. She told me you entered this residence because you wanted to kill us and have children of your own. I patted his head. I have no need to harm either of you. Why? Feeding the two of you already consumes enough rice. If I added another child, the residence might go bankrupt. Pei Chuantuan immediately raised one hand. Chuantuan does not eat much. I glanced at the 3 osmanthus cakes hidden in her sleeve. Finish eating the evidence before making that claim. After Liu Ruyan was taken away, the courtyard finally became quiet. Pei Yanhan walked with me toward my rooms. Moonlight rested on his shoulders, softening his cold features. When we reached the covered corridor, he suddenly spoke. Shen Jiaozhou. Yes. I have fallen in love with you. My foot stopped in mid-step. The confession arrived as suddenly as a steamed bun dropping from the sky and landing directly in my bowl. I turned toward him. His expression remained calm. The tips of his ears were red. The mythical beasts inside my mind stopped stamping. They formed an orderly line and began beating drums. What do you like about me? You are intelligent, honest, and fiercely protective of those you accept. He paused. Your cooking is excellent. I nodded. The final reason is clearly the most important. It is not. Then what is? He looked directly at me. You. This man rarely spoke sweetly. When he did, his words flew like arrows aimed directly at the heart. I cleared my throat and struggled to remain calm. It will not be difficult to make me believe you. Tell me what I must do. I pointed toward the kitchen. First, learn to chop scallions. That evening, the Prince Regent, whose power shook the imperial court, spent 2 hours chopping scallions in the kitchen. By the end, his eyes were red, as if he had suffered a terrible injustice. I stood nearby and laughed until tears ran down my face. He looked up. You did this deliberately. How could you accuse me of such a thing? I widened my eyes innocently. Your Highness, scallions treat everyone equally. He set down the knife. Then he reached out and pulled me into his arms. Before I could react, he lowered his head and pressed a kiss to my forehead. Then you should treat us equally. How? I chopped the scallions. His arms tightened around me. You agree to marry me. Prince Duan's case was resolved soon afterward. He was convicted of embezzling disaster relief funds, disguising moldy rice as fresh grain, bribing palace servants, and attempting to murder the Empress Dowager. His title was stripped, and he was exiled to the northern frontier. According to rumor, he complained throughout the journey that the cold, steamed buns provided by the guards were inedible. Eventually, the guards lost patience and stuffed 3 buns into his mouth. He never criticized anyone's cooking again. As an accomplice, Liu Ruyan was sent to labor on a northern estate. She had always claimed to possess a kind heart and to be unable to bear the suffering of small animals. Pei Yanhan therefore placed her in charge of 300 pigs. She fed them from dawn until night. Her kindness finally became extremely specific. Nanny Joe had stolen an enormous sum. Her property was confiscated, and she was ordered to stand in the public market and recite the false accounts she had created. The citizens turned her crimes into a song called Nanny Joe Steals the Chicken. The words were simple. The melody was impossible to forget. Even Pei Chuantuan learned it. Nanny Joe, her arms are long. First the bird's nest, then the sugar is gone. After hearing it twice, I sent the composer 10 taels of silver. Art came from life, and the most entertaining lives usually began when villains insisted upon courting death. After returning all the money he had taken, Chef Feng became head chef of Shen Family Restaurant. He formally accepted me as his master and declared himself the first disciple of the School of the Stove. Gao Yidao refused to fall behind and also came to study beneath me. The two men argued for 3 months over who should be the senior disciple. At last, I ordered them to compete by washing dishes. Whoever finished first would enter the school first. From that day forward, the two greatest chefs in the capital trembled instinctively whenever they saw a dirty bowl. Shen Family Restaurant continued to expand. I also established a culinary academy for women, accepting those without families as well as those who simply wished to learn a trade. Some people claimed women should not appear in public. I invited them to starve for 3 days before repeating the opinion. Most did not survive until the second missed meal. They quietly entered the line and purchased food. Pigsty became the restaurant's young manager. At 10 years old, he could calculate 3 account books without missing a single coin. When the Minister of Revenue saw his work, his eyes lit up. He looked ready to abduct the boy and place him in government service immediately. Pei Chuantuan became the capital's most famous food critic. Whenever someone asked what she thought of a newly opened restaurant, she would finish eating and offer a single judgment. Not as good as Mother's. The following day, the restaurant would invite me to offer guidance. Its business would usually improve afterward. As for Pei Yanhan, he became my most loyal food tester. He was also the most expensive person ever assigned to tend a stove fire. One evening, I returned from the academy and found more than a dozen wooden chests arranged across the main hall. They did not contain jewels or gold. Inside were the property deeds of the entire Prince Regent's residence, its ledgers, a duplicate military command seal, and records of every estate and business under its control. Pei Yanhan stood among the chests. He looked more solemn than he did at court. What is this? Betrothal gifts. I raised an eyebrow. Are we not already married? The first marriage does not count. He walked toward me. You did not desire it. I did not understand you. This time I wish to ask for your hand properly. I looked around at the room full of account books. Your Highness proposes with financial records. Very practical. You enjoy examining accounts. I do. Then they are all yours. The beads of the imaginary abacus, inside my mind, leaped toward the rafters. Every business and property owned by the Prince Regent's household. This was not a proposal. It was a large-scale transfer of assets. Still, I could not agree too quickly. That might make it appear that I loved only his money. Although money was also very lovable. I sighed with deliberate difficulty. There is one final condition. Tell me. There are 3 large cooking pots in the rear courtyard. They were used for today's banquet and have not yet been washed. Pei Yanhan remained silent for a moment. Then he turned and rolled up his sleeves. Not one unnecessary word. That night, the Prince Regent crouched in the rear courtyard and scrubbed cooking pots. He worked with greater seriousness than when commanding an army during a siege. Pei Si and Pei Chuantuan watched from the top of the wall. Chuantuan whispered, "Once father finishes washing the pots, will mother marry him?" Pei Si nodded. "Probably. Can we go inside and watch?" "No." "Why not?" Pei Si considered the question. Chef Feng said that after adults marry, they do things children are not allowed to watch. Pei Chuantuan immediately brought over a small stool. Then we can charge other people silver to listen. I stood behind the wall, my temple throbbing. Wonderful. My daughter had developed commercial instincts at 6 years old. The direction of her business was simply dangerous. I picked up one child in each hand and carried them back to their rooms. After Pei Yanhen finished washing the pots, he changed into bright red wedding robes and performed the marriage ceremony with me again. This time, there were no schemes, no misunderstandings. No one forced either of us. I wore a phoenix coronet and scarlet wedding robes as I placed my hand in his. He asked softly, "Do you regret it?" "A little." His fingers tightened. I continued slowly. "Had I known your highness would become so obedient, I would have ordered you to wash pots on the first day." He laughed helplessly. "I will wash them from now on." "After every meal?" "Yes." "During festivals?" "Yes." "What if court officials are waiting to discuss state affairs?" "They can wait." I nodded in satisfaction. That was true marital sincerity. Many years later, stories about me still circulated throughout the capital. Some claimed I had conquered 2 unruly children with 1 bowl of red-braised pork. Some said I had overturned half the imperial court with a pot of congee. Others claimed the cold and merciless Prince Regent possessed no principles where I was concerned. Whenever I frowned at someone, he supposedly asked whether they preferred exile or confiscation of their property. Some of those rumors were true. Others were exaggerated. For example, Pei Yanhen was not entirely without principles. He possessed 3. First, I was right. Second, if I was wrong, refer to the first principle. Third, whoever finished eating had to wash the pot. One spring afternoon, I sat in the upper floor of Shen family restaurant and rested in the sunlight. Pei Yanhen peeled grapes for me. Pei Si examined accounts downstairs. Pei Chuantuan ran through the room, carrying a plate of freshly baked milk cakes. In the kitchen, Chef Feng and Gao Yidao were once again arguing over which of them was the senior disciple. Their voices shook dust from the ceiling. I ate a grape and closed my eyes contentedly. Once, everyone had despised Shen Jiazhou. Now, there were people to earn silver for me, people to wash my pots, people to care for my children, and people to drag away my enemies. My life was as perfect as a freshly steamed crab roe soup dumpling. Thin skin, abundant filling, still warm from the steamer. Pei Yanhen suddenly asked, "What would you like for dinner?" I considered the question. "Hot pot." "Very well." "You will cut the vegetables." "Very well." "You will wash the pot." "Very well." I turned my head. "Your Highness, why do you agree to everything now?" He bent down and kissed my forehead. "I have already admitted my mistake." "What mistake?" "I once failed to understand that marrying you was the greatest blessing of my life." Sweetness entered my heart. Only briefly. The next moment, I placed the grape skins in his hand. "Words are not enough. Throw these away." He rose with the resignation of a man who understood his fate. I watched him walk away and began to laugh. There was nothing to be done. Rivers and mountains might change, but a person's true nature rarely did. The woman who married the Prince Regent founded the greatest restaurant beneath heaven and raised 2 children admired throughout the capital, never transformed into a gentle and obedient noble lady. She continued loving silver. She continued loving food. She continued enjoying the sight of her enemies meeting disaster. With a spatula in her hand, she crossed the inner courtyards, entered the imperial palace, and finally became the most dangerous legend in all Great Zhou. And I was that woman.